All right. To start, could you introduce yourself for me, please?
Hi, this is Tracy Neary. I own a small company by the name of Two Dames and Friends Incorporated. I hold the position of general manager, project manager, and sometimes functional manager.
Okay. Could you please describe to me what your company does?
We're a project management team that helps clients and realtors get homes ready for the market.
All right. And generally, what would you say that your management style is?
Well, I have a couple of different styles that I've mixed together. One I would consider more of a visionary style, in which I train my employees on everything that I understand about what keeps Two Dames functioning, and how we carve out our profit margin. I try to empower everyone to know, and through empowering people, I also profit share. But we try to empower everyone to make their own decisions, and to understand why decisions are being made. And then once we've coached them and trained them in, they're encouraged to make their own decisions. So I think the greatest tool any one employee can bring to the job is their good judgment. And then they get a profit share, so they are able to redeem value from good decision making.
Okay, sweet. And does your company partake in presentations and/or conferences?
We do all the above. We do individual consultations with individual clients, so that would be a presentation. It's about an hour long, and we teach a client what we can do to help them with their project. And I try to come into those particular consults or presentations at the level the client's at. So instead of coming in and telling them everything we do, I sit down and say, what is it that you think you might need help with your project?
Okay.
And as they're describing their project to me, then I can come up with, we do this, we can help with that, or you can do that on your own, and this is the least expensive, least stressful way to get from point A to point B. So once a client, I'm developing trust is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Once
Okay.
a client trusts us, then they're more apt to give us the whole project to do.
Yeah.
And another presentation that I do is to groups of realtors, and I'm presenting why a project manager can help them move clients along more quickly in getting homes ready for the market. And in the real estate market, timing is everything. So clients are confused about what comes first. You know, do we paint? Do we do the floors? Do we clean? Do we clean out?
Yeah.
And so when we come in with a full project plan and a timeline, they are more apt to jump on board with us, and we get through it more quickly.
Yeah.
And that means the realtor can then sell the property more quickly.
Okay. All right. And to go circle back a little bit, when you're trying to build trust with a client, how is that form of communicating with a client different than talking to, let's say, your average realtor?
That's a good question. With a client, it's very personal. And so instead of, I'm asking them about their children, their lives, the things that they value the most that are around them. That trust level's developed on a very personal level. With realtors, the communication is more business oriented.
Okay.
So it's, what can I do to help you with your business, rather than it being an interpersonal relationship that you're developing.
Yeah.
Although that comes along after a time.
Yeah.
I'm basically given an hour to become a client's best friend. And with a realtor, it's over a series of numerous clients that they begin to develop a level of trust.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. All right. And then, again, kind of the same type of question. When speaking to the realtors, you said it was a little bit more professional, you said?
Yes.
What kind of tactics, or like, do you use certain tones, or what are certain strategies you use when talking to realtors that you might not know as well as others?
I'm always trying to discuss or key on elements that will line their pockets with money
Yeah.
and line their pockets more quickly. So it's how will this benefit you? And also in the real estate market, because people are selling homes, and that's a very personal thing for most people, realtors end up being engaged with elderly people often who are very emotionally driven. And when they're able to hire a project manager like me or one of my employees, it gives them a buffer so they don't have to take on as much of the emotional stuff.
Yeah.
And so they can go out and sell real estate and have one of us take on grandma who's crying about leaving her house of 40 years, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm teaching them, not only can I benefit them financially, but I can also take some of the stress load off of them.
Yeah. Okay. I have another question here for you. What do you believe is, or in your experience as a business owner, what is the hardest part of communicating as a leader to basically anybody in your day?
Oh, that's really easy. So I have two sons. It's the same thing as being a mom. When communicating with anyone, it's trying to make sure that they clearly understand what the intent is of your words. Because you can say something and you're meaning one thing, and people can take it in any number of ways.
Yeah.
So my best friend in communication is to ask somebody to repeat back to me how they are interpreting what I've just said.
Okay, so basically you go through paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I'll say, hey, we need to get this done in a set timeline. And then when we're coming to conclude our conversation with whoever it is I'm talking with, whether it be a vendor or an employee or a client, I will go over the key topics and hit on the things that we need to repeat so that everybody involved is in agreement that we said it's going to take 3 weeks, it's going to cost approximately this much money, and that we need to do it in this order, A, B, C, D. So saying it to begin with, discussing the details, and then repeating it at the end, and then having people repeat it back to me, saying, so can you repeat back to me, what you think the most important thing is to get done first.
Okay.
And once you start engaging people in the conversation, you're not just talking at them, but they're being engaged in the conversation, they actually bring a different element of judgment, because now they're using their own thought process rather than depending on you to do their thinking for them. Now they're investing differently into the conversation.
Perfect. Okay. I have another question for you. When doing a kind of an intercompany meeting with your employees, what do you think is the most effective way to go about a meeting as far as who does a majority of the talking and how questions are handled and how basic problem solving kind of goes down?
Listen first. So don't start the meeting out with a whole bunch of words. Start the meeting out by engaging other people in conversation. Hey, how's your day going? Make it personal. Hand them something to eat or drink. You're calming everyone down. You're getting them, comfortable in their own chairs. And then you say, hey, does anybody have anything they want to bring up first?
Okay.
Now you've got the ball rolling. And once people start talking, they become engaged in conversation. If you start the talking first, people tend to start shutting down.
Okay. All right. And then as far as that goes, do you normally make agendas, or you kind of have a briefing at the beginning or end of a meeting? How do you know when to wrap things up and when a problem really has been solved?
That's a great question. For a client project, a consult, and then for employee, like our team that's going to be doing that particular project, we start out with what I call a project plan, and in your scenario, you're calling it an agenda.
Yeah.
We sit down and review the project plan. Everybody reads through it, and then I ask people to ask me questions about it, which starts engaging people in conversation. And then at the conclusion, we always wrap it up by, when people are done talking.
Yeah.
We don't talk very much because we're usually standing in a client's house, and we know we've got 10 to 15 minutes to kind of review what we're going to do. And most of us are really well trained in by then.
Yeah.
The people that are learning, they're just there to watch and observe and absorb information. They can, like when I have employees that are brand new on a job, sometimes they'll shadow us. Sometimes I'll just say, hey, can you pack that box? Can you do this? Can you do that? Give them small jobs until they're really comfortable with the smaller jobs, and then build them up to bigger jobs. But anyway, back to your question. How do I know when to wrap it up?
Yeah.
These meetings don't last more than 10 to 15 minutes. I find most people don't have much more of an attention span than that.
Yeah.
If it's going to be a longer topic and a deeper topic, we'll break it down into bits, so we're not sitting in hour-long meetings.
Okay. Yeah. And on that, do you notice any distinct differences in the way that people talk when it's a face-to-face as opposed to maybe like a web call,
100%.
like a Zoom call?
Yeah. You cannot beat face-to-face.
Okay.
People have a tendency when electronics are involved in it, even if it's a Zoom call, the minute you have something that separates you from the other person, the less emotionally you're involved in it, the less aware you are of that other person's emotional involvement in the conversation.
Okay.
So once you do that, people will say and do things that they wouldn't normally do if they were looking you in your eye.
Okay.
And so people say the most bizarre things to me via text. They leave bizarre phone messages. They will say things that are out of character for even them because they feel protected by the electronics.
Yeah.
So I find it much better to be personal. You can't always be, but when you're new in a relationship, it's really important to be face-to-face. Once you have an established and trusting relationship, then you can fall back on electronics.
Yeah. And how big is body language when conducting these meetings?
To me, everything. Yeah. People say so much more with their body language than they do with their words. And I always tell people, I'm also watching body language, and I'll just talk about it openly, and that may make you feel uncomfortable, but know that it's my greatest tool.
Yeah.
And so somebody can look away from me and say something, and I'll say, you just said this, but you looked away from me when you said it. Just teach me what that means. Are you uncomfortable? Do you have, sad feelings around that? I'm often working with people that have had someone pass away.
Yeah.
Or they're feeling emotional struggles over their siblings that they're fighting with, over a house being sold, all kinds of interesting situations we get ourselves into. So body language, and people are surprised by how much their body language is teaching me. They're like, wow, I did that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then they become more open with me verbally.
Okay. Is there a time that you've had a large communication issue with an employee? And if so, how did you kind of go about resolving that, or how did you fix that communication gap?
Again, taking them out to dinner, taking them out to lunch, sitting down with them, looking at them in their eye and saying, gosh, I'm feeling this way about what was said. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
And what can we do to bring this together? Because right now it's not working for us, and I'm not sure how to get from point A to point B without your help.
Yeah.
Empowering people to help you oftentimes engages people in wanting to do something about the situation.
Yeah. Are there ever times where you've had to kind of change your style of communication with an employee to be more assertive? At times, you have to kind of really assume that leadership role.
Yeah. Yep. Not too long ago, early in the spring, I had to sit down with an employee and say things I've never had to say to an employee before, like, as long as I'm in charge of 2 games, I will have the final say, because she was basically behind my back trying to take over the company, making company decisions without floating it past myself and my business partner. And we encourage people to, make decisions and to move forward with decision making. But when you're making financial decisions for a small company, you have to make sure that the bookkeeper knows it and signs off on it, so that we know we can afford it, and
Yeah.
and myself and my business partner and our bookkeeper have the financial big picture, and our employees don't have that on a daily, monthly, even a quarterly. We do about an every 6 month review, financial review with all the employees, and let them know where we're at.
Okay. So how would you say, what path did you kind of take to really let that employee know that what they were doing was maybe not okay? How did you kind of have to like conduct that way, or which path did you kind of go down to really tell them that like it was a serious matter?
Yeah, I did direct communication. I asked if she felt as though, I asked her, I understand that I'm empowering people to make decisions, but at what point did she, think it was okay to spend $5,000 worth of 2 games money without talking to, pretty much everyone involved, because we're a small company and we do run it as a democracy for the most part. And so she's communicated with really well and clearly, and yet she didn't return that favor. I just talked about it very openly, just like I am here, and reviewed with her what our company policies were and asked her if she clearly understood what I was talking about. She said yes, and we were able to move forward.
Okay. And then to kind of go off of that topic, what was a major time that you had a communication issue with a client, and how did you resolve that?
I had one today. It's interesting for me that clients tend to hear what they want to hear, and I say something and then I put it in writing. And even when I do that, sometimes they move off into their own realm and say, oh, we didn't realize. So today a client scheduled their own clean out while we had cleaners and painters on the property. And we can't have 3 different vendors on a property and function very well. So, I just called him and said, hey, this isn't going to work. How would you like to handle it? And he came back with, oops, I wasn't paying attention, was I? And I'm like, well, we have to, cancel either the clean out crew or cancel the painter and the cleaner. Just let us know how you want us to move forward.
Okay.
And he said, you know what, I'm going to let you do the management. I'm going to get out of it. And so now Layla's managing that project for him.
Okay.
Which we should have been doing all along, but he kind of stepped into it and started doing his own thing.
Gotcha. Perfect. And then I have one final question for you. As someone that owns a company and, speaking to people that would maybe want to start their own, what do you think is like the biggest thing about communicating with anybody as a company owner? What do you think is the biggest kind of hurdle that people need to get over? Like, what's a lesson that people really need to know?
That different people have different learning styles. And so be aware of how people are reacting to you if you've verbally stated something and you've put it in writing and they're still not understanding what you're saying. Ask them what the best method is to communicate with them, and put it back on their plate to be responsible for the communications. Because oftentimes people aren't paying attention. They want to blame it on somebody other than themselves. So if you just say, hey, we've talked about this and I put it in writing, and somehow we're still miscommunicating, how can I best communicate with you?
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Again, I think it's engaging people.
Yeah. Yeah, for